Welcome to our Investment Ready event here. DG Unlimited is providing a series of events for Creatives Unlimited, and we are delighted this morning to welcome Alison MacLeod, who is a wonderful jeweller and businesswoman right here in Thornhill and Dumfries and Galloway. Alison is with us today to do a short session on creativity and developing your creative practice into a sturdy and healthy business, and some of the processes and thoughts and the tug of war that can occur while you go through that process. Alison, it's lovely to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you, Leah, for coming to join us and having a conversation with us about this. So I think what we'll do is we'll go straight into Alison's presentation and get started, and then we can have a chat afterwards. How does that sound?
Super.
Wonderful. Okay, I'm just going to go in and start your presentation for you, Alison. There we go. There we are. Can you see that okay?
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, my name's Alison MacLeod and I make jewellery, as you know, and I am going to talk a little bit about my path to the point that I'm at now. I've been in business for 20 years, so I'm just going to start by talking about what I do, where I'm at now, and then I'm going to go back and talk about how I got to this point. So I work in gold, and my sort of signature style is this fish scaly pattern, which you can see in the ring here, which I call the catkin. It's like the catkin collection, I call it. And I make this by building up. I start each piece in silver, and I make all the tiny little scales. Actually, these scales are kind of a bigger size, but they can be really, like, I don't know how big the little ones are, like a millimeter or two, the littlest ones. Scales, and I layer them all up and solder them together, and then I to make a kind of sheet of this fish scaly pattern, and then I solder that sheet onto like a back plate or around a ring, like in this case, and do all the finishing, and then get a mold made, and then get it cast in gold or whatever metal I'm working in, but predominantly working in gold. It's fair trade gold that I'm working in at the moment, although I'm moving on to working with SMO, single mine origin gold, this year. So that, like, I kind of, this ring, like, pop the next slide on, Tabby. I kind of, each year I make a new collection. Well, it's not even each year, like whenever the inspiration hits me, I suppose I make a new collection, and I make pieces that are bigger and more expressive and kind of attract attention, and that's what this group of pieces were all about. The two bigger pairs of earrings where I was kind of trying to invoke the dewy swags of spiders' webs that I saw in the woods on a walk last winter. And then with the shimmer of diamonds, the line of diamonds to kind of catch the light. And then from that, it kind of diffuses down to more commercial pieces that perhaps are better price points for people, like the smaller studs and necklace to the left. So yeah, these pieces I did last year, I can show you actually, in a lot of it kind of comes out of my sketchbook. Can I, Tabby, show, like, go bigger screen to show my sketchbooky stuff?
Yes,
and then go back to that presentation. Is that
yes,
all right?
of course you can. Of course you can. Let's see.
So I don't know how much of this you'll be able to see, but this group of pieces started, where did it start? Like here, with this sort of photos for reference, and then a wee bit of drawing, and then working through design processes. So it's like inspiration that then gets pulled out into design ideas. But I used to keep a sketchbook. I'll talk about sketchbooks a little bit more later, but I used to keep a sketchbook, and stopped for quite a long time because it's the first thing, because when you start a business, it's like the first thing to go because it's not necessarily making you money. But I've kind of started back, and I find it really useful actually to have that there.
That's really interesting. Can I ask a question? Because I'm fascinated, because I work with designers. So in some and I know you're a jeweler, but you're designing jewelry.
Yeah.
So I find it really surprising that you kind of stopped having the sketchbook. Like, my daughter's an artist, and she would literally cry if somebody said you can't have your sketchbook, because it's like her comfort blanket. So I'm interested in that, about how
I didn't have it for a while.
Because I'm looking at that, and I was actually thinking, God, that's the most beautiful, tidy sketchbook I've ever seen in my life.
Well, that's a jeweler's sketchbook for you. We can't do anything like everything's quite tight. Like, honestly, ask me to do any job, baking, anything. Darning, I've got really into darning, very neat and laborious. That's what I'm like with everything. I think I'm a nightmare at home. But yeah, I think that intermediate time when I didn't have a sketchbook, I might like do little sketches, like little doodles, but generally I actually can I suppose it's through experience and time. I can, in my mind, like visualize things, and I know exactly what it is that I'm looking for. Do you know what I mean? I know what wire it is that I need to use for this piece that I've designed in my head, and I would find that, like, I'd wake up at night and I'd be processing things and like doing this decision making on a like visual front, but all in my head. And that's what was happening in that between time. But actually, it's really good for it not to just all be in my head. It's really helpful for my sort of mental well-being for it to come out in the sketchbook. And actually, I've started to do things on Photoshop a bit as well, so I can really visualize things, and it really reduces my error, like the amount of mistakes that I make in terms of like the finished outcome is what I really wanted, because sometimes, you know, you do it, and I am good at visualizing, but you don't always get it right.
Okay.
So yeah, that's like talking about the bigger, more expressive pieces. But actually, in the next slide, what I do a lot of is take the idea, like I was talking about with the bigger pieces in that last picture, where I take the idea of the bigger piece and then kind of refine it down into kind of distill it into something more commercial.
Okay, do you want me to show the next slide?
Yeah, that would be really great.
So the next one is this one
with the leafy pattern thing on it.
Oh, sorry, go on.
That's the one. That one. Yeah, that one. So this is two pieces, a big and a small version of the same thing, where it's called the Contemplation Bead Necklace, where I've been able to really miniaturize, because I'm working in gold. In order for me to kind of reach people's price points, it's all about scale, and kind of taking that scale down, because the weight of the piece it's got a lot to do. It's obviously the time that I put into it, but that's got a lot to do with how much the piece ends up costing. So this was a nice little piece that you can twiddle. It's like a little bead, that moves and you can twiddle it. And because I'm a fiddler, I'm doing it as a talk. I'm playing with my necklace. And so this is called the contemplation bead necklace, and it's done really well commercially for me, and is something that I can produce quite quickly. I think you don't often know what that piece is going to be until it's out there in the world. I think sometimes I make things and I'm like, this is it. This is going to be like the one. But you know, it's not. Nobody buys it. But this is the one on the left. The smaller one is my bread and butter piece now, which is finally with the gold collection. I've got that. And then next slide is again me trying to sort of fulfill a more commercial sort of need. I don't know whether you can call it need when it's jewelry. I don't know if everybody technically needs it, but
yes, we do. We all need it. It's essential to life and happiness.
Yeah, thanks for that. So a diamond pendant, but then always with a twist to make it my kind of style. And then the next is another kind of bread and butter thing for me is the wedding market, wedding and engagement rings. So I make a lot of one of a kind pieces that when I work with diamonds, I'm able to, or you know, like a kind of true blue sapphire. These are colors that I can find the same stone pretty much over and over again. But when it comes to colors, it's always hard to replicate. So it's quite a nice way of, and a nice excuse to make things one of a kind. So like last year I did 2 wee groups of these rings, and do quite well with the people. I think rings are always a really good thing. They always, that's always my sort of top selling thing of the year is rings, and like equal amounts of diamonds and stone set rings. And I love, my favorite colors are blues and greens. So this is like, I think I just do, because it's my favorite, I'm better at it. Do you know what I mean? I do pinky ones as well, but I just think they sell better, my blues and greens. So then the next slide is the sort of real, like, another big thing, actually, probably, is it the biggest? I don't know. Anyway, they're all big things for me that I really need to focus on, which is bespoke pieces. So people look at the example of the rings in the last slide that are on my website, on my Instagram, and then they know they like my work. That's always important for me. And we use sort of that as inspiration to create something new for them. So this was an engagement ring that I did with a customer with mixed coloured diamonds. But always, when I work to commission, it's always based on my collection. So it's important for me to establish that they are coming to me from that perspective. Yeah, I suppose that's about my work just now, and my sort of situation is
Alison, do you want me to put this off just now?
Yeah, maybe. I'm based here in Thornhill. I moved back here from Glasgow like 8 years ago, and set up my studio. Here's home. I grew up here, and I've got a wee team of part-time kind of help in different areas. I've got Sarah, who lives locally and it comes from here, but went off to Duncan of Jordanston to do jewellery and has come back. And she does a couple of days a week for me. She started cleaning up castings, and now it switches the sort of basic end, and now she's been and trained up in stone setting, so she's getting more and more advanced along the way. And we've got a great kind of collaborative relationship where she we chat about her work, because she's here 2 days a week, so then she does her own work the other days, and so I try to sort of keep her, you know, like chat about what she's doing and mentor her informally, to sort of I don't know, like just
I
keep
think
her work going.
that's
Well,
really lovely. So what you've got there is someone who's helping you expand your business, but while they're doing that, you're actually helping them gain experience and giving them the confidence and allowing them the time to develop their practice as well. And Duncan and Jordanson Art College is amazing. So if she's done jewelry up there, then she you know, you're working with, and I would say it's almost a formal mentorship, not even an informal one, because she's working for you, with you.
it's this sort of,
That's an exciting model to use, actually, wouldn't
and
you?
I'd love to, do you know, it's really important that it is that 2 days, or you know, it could be it has been 3 days in the past, but as long as she has her time to do her own thing, I think her soul would be sucked away if she
Yeah.
worked 5 days a week for me. I think it's important that she has her own thing as well. And I think her mind is burring while she's working on my work. She's thinking about her own work as well. And so I do think that's important for her to kind of be alive creatively. And then, so Sarah's with me 2 days. I've got Emily, Sarah's freelance, everybody's freelance at the moment, although we're sort of looking at employment for Sarah at the moment as well. Emily is a friend and lives locally and has a business doing copywriting for people. So she does kind of, it's like half a day a week or 1 day a week for me, where she does she's good at copywriting and the kind of strategy side of things. I am dyslexic and hate writing stuff. Like, I did a funding application recently and I hadn't done one in a long time, and it's made me remember how hard I find it and torturous. But Emily is great and takes all that pressure off me, and it's great to have got to the stage to have someone. And then I've got Innes, who sets my stones and does engraving and is really good at technical stuff. And he works out with the region. He's up in Cardross. And he is a tonic. He's funny and very capable. I'm a good maker, but he's and I'm a kind of creative maker, but he's a real technical guy. So I can always phone him as well when I need help with things. I've got my wee workshop. I'm going to show you my wee workshop. So we've got 2 benches. You maybe can't see the 2 benches. The one closest to me is my own bench, and then Sarah's bench is over there.
Cool.
And just a wee space, but I'm hoping when we've got a project in Thornhill called Old School Thornhill, where which I'm also part of, we've set up a charity to buy the old primary school here and make it into a co-working space, and also a space with like permanent office and studios. So I, in a year's time, would plan to move into there to a bigger space. I sell my work through my website, e-commerce, but more often than not, people come directly to me. They see things online and then come to me, and we chat about things, which I much prefer, because with my price points, I really need to build relationships with my customers, and that's what a lot of what I do is, building trust and building those relationships with my customers. I promote my work through Instagram a lot. That's the main way that I kind of promote my work. And after being away from the galleries for quite a while, I have started selling through galleries a little bit again, just through sale or return. I'd love it if places would buy collections, but I'm not at that point yet. And I've just started doing a wee bit more shows again, like going out and doing exhibitions myself, like at fairs. So now I'm going to talk a wee bit about my path and how I got to this point. So like I said, I grew up round about here. I grew up in the middle of nowhere on the estate of this old Victorian mansion, and I think the aesthetic, you'd find little bits of pottery and things in like scattered about the ground, and old relics of this and that, and I really think that sort of decayed elegance has been massively informative to my aesthetic. I went to Dunsker School and then Wallace Hall Academy, and applied in my 6th year. I think really I always wanted to be a jeweler, and it's a bit weird and creepy that I've ended up making that my job, but I mean, it's nice. I really like it. But I mean, there was other things in there as well. I liked fashion and things, but I think it always came back to jewelry. That scale has always been what I've been most comfortable with. So from school, I applied to Edinburgh College of Art, knowing that they had a great jewelry department there, and didn't get in. And actually, that's like the first of my big failures that actually has helped me so much along the way. And so from then, all my friends were going off to university, and I was just desperate to leave. But I'm gutted that I had to stay in Dumfries and do the course at what was George Street School of Art and is now Dumfries and Galloway College. But actually, it was amazing. It was like the best thing that could have happened to me. So I applied again, and to Edinburgh College of Art. I was quite determined that that was what I wanted, and got in that time. And so went to art college with this amazing work ethic after the failure that I'd had, where I just sort of, was arty in my 6th year. Like, I didn't really focus and do the work. It totally changed my work ethic to like really knuckle down, and that's what it's been ever since. So yeah, getting into Edinburgh College of Art, and then into the jewellery department, that's where the sketchbook thing started. You get a really strong technical grounding there, but then also there's a focus on drawing in sketchbooks, big time, which suited me down to the ground. So that's where the habit of keeping a sketchbook really came from. So I don't know, I feel like you do your degree, you're in that, and you feel like that's they're sort of dragging everything out of your soul, and it's the hardest that you're ever going to work. And it is in a way, and it's wonderful how they, if it goes right, can kind of distill everything that you're interested in, everything that is the essence of you, into this collection of work for your degree show. But then, like, you get kind of spat out into the world, and all of a sudden you've got to run a business. Like, you're selling your work, and I think that's the sort of real, I don't know, I feel like that's really disjointed. It doesn't add up for a lot of people, because you go into this jewelry department because you're good at making jewelry, not because you're good at running a business. You're going to be good at running a business, and that's where the kind of drop off happens quite a lot. But actually, for me, actually, I immediately enjoyed the sort of making something and selling it. I really enjoyed the immediacy of that. The sort of, it just really made sense for me. And I think the thing that you've got to do, though, is by all, like, go out and do the exhibitions and things, but when you get to a point of is this working, is this not working, it's thinking about how like what your skill set is. My skill set was never writing, like I've talked about. So I think there's jobs in administration within the arts that like are really interesting and fulfilling. There's teaching. There's all sorts of different pathways. And I think I've taken the most obvious one, but I don't think that that's right for everybody. And I think for me, what was quite difficult, like I was making money for quite a long time. I'd come out of art college and I was new. I was working in silver and mixed media at that time. And you know, it was like doing all the exhibitions, being picked up, quite exciting. But then there was a recession about 2007, 2008, and really my market of ladies buying themselves a pair of earrings for like £90 just completely nosedived because people didn't have that expendable income anymore. And really that's when I had to diversify, and I wasn't making any money at that point. And actually, again, another failure that's really helped me to this point now. I kind of clung on with my fingernails. Actually, do you know what happened is at that sort of time I was making no money and I was clinging on. I was doing like one-on-one teaching in my studio. I had another bench that I could use, and that's what kind of kept me going financially. But then we started our family. So actually I got maternity allowance, and that was the first time I was on a hamster wheel supplying all these galleries and putting out all that work and all that effort and trying to keep them all stocked. And it was all on sale or return. So all the stock was like my financial output. And I just had, you know, I didn't have time to stop and take a look at what I was doing. But then actually being allowed that time and getting maternity allowance. I know this sounds awful. Like nobody had ever given me money for doing nothing before. And I know it's not a lot of money at all, but I was just delighted that it gave me this time away. And I was able to see my business with perspective. And I think at that point I was trying to please too many markets. And for me, I'm not saying this is what works for everybody, but for me, what the best thing I ever did was just shrink that down and know what I wanted to do and actually become a lot more commercial in the gold side of things.
That's really interesting because it seems to be, I've heard so many times that creatives get burnt out and actually end up struggling because they're trying to create such a wide, broad spectrum of things. Whereas actually,
make a little bit of money here, a little bit of money here.
Yes. So there's an awful lot to be said about fine-tuning it and being very strong. That takes a lot of bravery, though, I would say. You know, as a creative to say, this is all I do and I don't do anything else.
I had that sort of breathing space. Do you know what? It was only because I was forced to stop that I could have that bravery. I don't know, it was like circumstance in my case, and everybody's lives are different. And I think, I don't know, maybe you've got to sort of take these opportunities when they come up. You don't really even know it's an opportunity. I thought I was stopping. I didn't really know that I was keeping going. I didn't know how you kept going when you had children. But actually it was the best thing ever. And actually from there, I became a lot more commercial. When I was at art college, commercial was a really dirty word. You were really encouraged, you wanted to be arty and make these big expressive pieces, but actually the people who continued after art college to make these big pieces had another job. Like a lot of them are more art teaching, or, you know, doing other things as well. And I think that's great. But it's not for everyone. And actually for me, getting that little voice of my art college days of my tutors, like getting rid of that, of the sort of the idea that being commercial was like a complete, you know, I was really letting myself down by being commercial. By getting rid of that, it was great. And I loved.
I can 100% back you up on that. I don't think it's just jewelry either.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Mine was literature, and the same happened for my masters. They were like, you know, full of disdain for anything that was commercial. You know, how dare you be a success? But you have to be published and you have to be great, but you can't make a lot of money. You can't, you know, so you end up doing this really niche stuff that nobody gets to read.
There's no market for it, really.
But it suits, it matches. So that's really interesting. And I've heard so many creatives saying the same thing. So yeah, that's a really, really important point to share with everyone, that it's not a dirty word. Commercialism's not a dirty word. And actually, in the climate that we're in now, and I don't know, I've got a ticker tape here, ladies, I've got to tell you, Nicola Sturgeon just resigned.
What?
I know, it just literally, so if you saw me going, that's
my word.
I know. I've got, because I do the radio broadcasting, I've got a live news ticker tape, and it just came flashing up. So she's just done a live thing.
I don't know if I can concentrate now. I'm like, what's going on? I know, it's like.
However, we're kind of getting to the point where we're doing a Q&A anyway. So I thought that we could start that. Leah, have you got a question for Alison? I've got one, and while Leah, you decide what you'd like to ask Alison. And I thought it would just be really nice, because we're all creatives from different perspectives, so we could just finish off this hour with just a really nice chat about, you know, our perspectives from what you've just said. But one of the things I wanted very, very specifically to ask you is, what do you think has helped you most in terms of reaching customers? Because you've got 7,000 followers on Instagram. You know, the people.
I could always do better, Tabby. Like, I'm like 7,000. That's not like no.
Right. Okay. Well, to me, that's a nice help, because I was looking at some of your followers. You've got a lot of jewelers. You've got a lot of people who are interested in jewelry. So it's not just followers, it's the quality of your followers, which I was impressed by. And I'm just one. And the other thing that I really wanted to talk about, because people forget about this, is your photography is beautiful. You know, I think how you've presented your brand and how you present yourself is part of why it's so strong and so commercially interesting and viable. I don't know if this is right, but my impression of your brand is that it is very unique and very handmade and very, very what's the word? Like you'll use old jewelry. There's an element of brand new and vintage and merging the two together, which I love. Right. So you've got that across really well. I'm not looking at, it doesn't look like some of the other Scottish jewelers who have gone down the commercial route, where I look at it and I think, yeah, but you didn't even make that. I'm not seeing that in your brand, which I really like. And I don't need to mention the other brands, but you know what I'm talking about. It just feels too mass market. They've gone beyond that. You've kept yours very still.
Or maybe trying to sit in the sort of middle ground of,
yes, and that's what I like about it. And I'll stop talking at that point. Leah, what do you think? Have you got anything to add?
No, I would totally agree with you that I think that, Alison, your branding is really, really strong. You get the story behind and the narrative behind your brand and the jewellery that you design very, very strongly across all of the communication stuff that you do. And I think as well, that's part of it that really, really helps is you're not afraid to sit behind a camera and actually talk. So you really, really do feel that personal connection with what you're doing, which obviously then builds a connection with your audience. And because it is you know, it is an investment buy, so you've got to build that trust with your audience before, and I think that really, really helps. You know, I don't wear jewellery, but if I did wear kind of fancy jewellery, like, it would be you that I would come to, because I know that I would trust you in doing, or having like a piece of my granny's or something like that, that I would definitely come to you and say, like, I would like a piece of jewellery.
It's a massive part of what I do, that building of the trust, and like all that on Instagram. Really, I've had a massive amount of help with that from Emily. She's doing all the copywriting, and she's pushing me to be like me physically, because it's not any of our natural standpoint. We want to hide behind the work, but I've seen the benefit of it, and that's been a real gradual thing, actually. First of all, she was asking me to do selfies, like in the studio or whatever, or wearing the jewelry, and I'd be like, oh God, like, really, do I have to? And like, take 300 photos of myself and then pull one out, and, you know, I can just about cope with people seeing that. To then, you know, I could do a little video of myself. You know, it's like me kind of just getting over myself. That's been a big thing, and that's what Emily's helped with massively. Just like, actually, what I say to myself is, nobody cares if my fringe looks a bit wonky, and if they do, then you know, it says a lot about them. Yes. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So that's how I do that, is by just telling myself, nobody cares. I just think to myself, nobody's watching, nobody cares. I can just ramble on, and that's fine and great. And it really does help that trust side of it, because like you say, I work with people's heirlooms a lot, and for somebody to allow me to cut up their granny's ring, and know that it's all gonna be okay, I need to build that trust massively. And with the photography, I've always worked with photographers, because I know that that's something I can't do. And I think that's also something that I would advise everybody. Like, if you know, once you get to a point where you can, if you know where your big weaknesses are, get help with that, whether it's a friend, whether you do it as a swap at the start, and then it kind of start, you know, then you start to pay them. Really, we have to be good at everything when we run our own businesses, but you become very aware where your weak spots are. I mean, you have to spin all these plates, but when you can get help with these things, do. But with living here, I'm just so always aware that my competitors live in London or Glasgow or whatever, and have like physical visibility with their work far more than I do. I'm tucked away here, and although people do visit, really the primary, and I do think this is true for everyone these days, even no matter where you live, but the primary way that people are going to see your work is through photos. They're not going to see the real thing. And so if those photos don't show the piece off, then you've made this amazing bit of jewelry. Now, I'm not bigging myself up here, like somebody else has made this amazing piece of jewelry, and if it's been rubbishly photographed, then you're not going to sell it. Full stop. The photographs do so much more. I think it does cost a lot of money to get good photographs, but you would do those photographs for an application or something. You can't just put that, like, because that's that budget for that photo shoot, for that application. Is it worth that? It's not just for that application. You use it everywhere for everything. So it's worth it.
That sounds like great advice. I want to just go over some of the key things that I picked up, which I loved about what you were saying. So you talked about bread and butter pieces, and that you never know what your bread and butter pieces are going to be, but when they come, there's a way to kind of commercialize that that's like a steady level of income. And then you've got bespoke pieces, the strength of the brand, good quality photography and communication to make yourself visible, so that it doesn't really matter that you're not in the center of one of the shopping districts in London, as it were, you know, or however. I've got a question about that. And then we've got building a team, even if it initially is informal, because we can't as individuals do everything all by ourselves all the time. And great strength comes in delegating and sharing tasks and giving people the opportunity to do what they're good at.
It's the most difficult thing to do, because
Yeah.
we like, when it's all been your own thing, and it had all been my own thing for like more than 10 years by the time I took somebody on, and it's all in your head and you just don't know how you would get it out. I suppose maybe I'd had work experience in to help me before that, so maybe I'd had people in the studio, and actually, even thinking back, having a student in was a big thing, trust, and like just taking your time to teach them to get to the stage that they need to be at. But it's one of the best things that you can do. I mean, it's not easy to find the right people either, but you've got to take big leaps sometimes. And I think, honestly, I think the only way I can grow my business is, like, my most precious thing is my time, and it's finite. So the only way that I can grow my business, which is something that I want to keep doing, is by getting help.
Yeah, I agree. And I think every successful freelancer in any creative sector finds that that's the case, because how do you turn one set of 20 hours a week into 60 hours a week or more? Leah, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was, because you've obviously got ambition to grow your business. What, if it's fine to ask, is like what are your next goals? What are your challenges, and what are your goals to do that, and how are you going to do that?
Well, although we've talked a lot about images and being visible online and the sort of benefit of that, I do see the limitation of that. And I can always keep working on my visibility online. I want to grow my following on Instagram. But my thing in the last few years, maybe 3 years, has been I need to be more visible. And actually, how I feel like that is possible is by my work being physically out there, because the photographs have done me so well and will keep doing that. But actually seeing, we're dealing with 3D tactile objects that are meant to be worn, and so I want to have my work in galleries. I have had my work in galleries. I've had stockists over the last couple of years. I've kind of grown that, but I'm sort of changing things around and thinking about who I show with. And then very much my market is Scottish. I'm kind of have built up a reputation. I feel like it's through word of mouth, a lot of it, and I'm more visible in Scotland. But I can kind of see that there's work to be done on the English market, and I think it's like unavoidable. The amount of the industry and all the eyes are in London, so I need to be more visible in London.
Okay.
And then after that, I want to start looking at the international market. So actually, it's quite exciting. Like I'm really aware that, like, Scotland's so small, and that's doing me really well. But that's like there's a whole rest of everything. And I don't want to be a massive, massive business. I'd like 3 people at the bench and me. But I don't know how manageable, how I can really do that being here, because getting the right people with the right skills in this area is tricky. I was so lucky to have found Sarah. But anyway, that's another thing that I can kind of look at. But I was going to say something else, but I can't remember what it was. Yeah, that's what I want to do.
I think what's really exciting about that is that all the way while you grow, you're still keeping a hold of that vision, and it's still you. It's still your brand. It's still your.
That's what I really need it to be. Yeah. I want it to be that. And people, what's happened is I've really, really only very recently stopped thinking about it as I've started to think it more of it as a brand, like you say, a brand, which to me before, I don't know, it just felt
really sometimes people think brand is a dirty word, and it really isn't. It really isn't. It can. I'm
quite happy with it now.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, and it's but I do. People have talked about, you're building this business and then you sell it on, and then, so for me that's too far. I'm like, why do I want to sell? This is me. It's just but then people do that with businesses, and maybe in a few years I'll be up for that, but I'm definitely not. That's not what I want to do. I'm not building a brand in that respect.
Brilliant. Alison, thank you. Leah, did you want to ask anything else? I think we'll leave it at there.
No, I think I'm fine. That was really interesting, Alison. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, Leah.
So much. And thank you for coming and keeping us company, Leah. Yeah. It's really good.
Yeah, it's always nicer to do it to a person.
Yes, it is. It's nicer. But also, I think it was actually nice to have that conversational style, because any of the members who look at this video on the website will get an awful lot from it, in terms of just being able to hear the various different. You really shared some important pieces of advice and insights that are going to be useful to lots of people. So thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.